So welcome to our session. So this is tips and tricks for student engagement, and I'm Dr. Addy Tolliver, Senior Instructional Designer at the Center for Teaching Excellence. So hopefully we are going to be able to get through all the items in the session before the 45 minutes so that it leaves us a little bit of Q&A time, but feel free to interrupt me and send questions through the chat or raise a digital hand and I'll stop. And as you will see throughout the session, I plan some question and answers time. So you can wait till the end or throughout the session to ask something. So to get started, we can cover, let me see if my computer will be helpful. Right now I have the little spinning wheel, the Mac spinning wheel of death happening. There we go. Here's the agenda. We're going to do a little quick bit of introductions, a little check-in. After that, we're going to be talking about online engagement and new norms. We're going to talk about some of the theory behind some student engagement strategies and some practical approaches of some things that you can do. And as we are doing this, I'm going to be modeling some engagement strategies that you can try to use in your class. And hopefully you can use them in synchronous meetings or asynchronous meetings. So by the end of the session, these are our learning objectives. You'll be able to create daily check-ins for your students. You should be able to develop and communicate kind of new norms to your students, facilitate student engagement with external Zoom tools, set up Zoom's interactive features to promote the achievement of learning objectives in your synchronous sessions, and embed active learning activities in your synchronous sessions. So that's hopefully kind of what we're going to be covering. So for the introductions and the check-in, I'm going to share a quick document to you through the chat window. So I would like for you to go in and access that document and share a few things about you. So these are the things that you're going to be sharing. What is your name? What courses you currently teach? What is your experience teaching online? And what is your most hilarious quarantine moment? So I'm going to give you about 3 minutes for you to click on the link through the chat, and you're going to be directed to a document, and you can start putting your information right there. So this is funny. Talia or Talia, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, but the quarantine haircut is definitely something that almost every household has experienced, and I bet that it was either super hilarious or tragic, right? So yeah, with Peter, he mentioned getting out of the house and being excited about it. I 100% relate to that. Just being able to walk the dog, it was like something that was welcoming. So we have some people in music, we have some people in Spanish, financial accounting. I see Keiko right there. Hello, Keiko. We have about 1 more minute left. So if your connection is slow, you can definitely continue just typing in through the chat. That's another way that you can participate, right? Do you have any more fun stories in quarantine that we can share with one another? Oh my gosh, so Susan, her cat gained weight, the quarantine 15, poor kitty. Ah, this is funny. Oh yeah, the people being stylists, that was a big thing. I see that as a pattern of everybody. And the cat, like a lot of cat people here, so that's good. I like that. Hello, cat people. I'm a cat person myself. I had to close the door, otherwise you'd see like a cat tail in front of me. I see like cats are appreciating our asparagus and gained weight. Oh my gosh, mixing up Zoom sessions between teaching and family, which was interesting, right? Like having to do the Zoom with family and friends. That was another thing that it was completely unusual. I try to also mix in, we did with some friends, some Zoom wine tasting parties, which was really interesting, right? Okay, well, thank you. This is the end of our third 3-minute timer. So thank you for sharing and thank you for introducing yourself. So this is an example of an activity that you can do with your students at the start of every class. You can set up a Google spreadsheet like this or a Google Doc. You can ask some questions to the students and you can do a quick check-in with them. It doesn't have to be class related, right? We're going through a pandemic, so you could even ask some fun stuff about like what is something funny that happened, or what do you feel some gratitude for this week, so that they can kind of see this as a fun kind of team bonding experience with their classmates. And also if you create a Google spreadsheet like this and you ask your students to contribute to it, you'll be able to have a record of this. So this could also be a way that you can kind of keep attendance. And Google Docs are free tools that you can use in your class. And you do like I did, where I shared through the chat. And it could be a document, it could be a spreadsheet, it could be anything, but students can collaboratively work on them. They can work on them in their own computers, or they can work on their own mobile devices. So to set up a shared document, you can go to drive.google.com, click to add a new sheet, doc, or a slide. You can click on the share settings to make sure that anybody that has the link to that document can actually edit the document. And then you can copy the share link and just share in Zoom. So Google has spreadsheets, documents, slides, so you can even create a quick PowerPoint presentation or something. But this is a way that you can fuse it. We're all connected at the same time, and we'll be able to kind of edit these documents at the same time.
Hey, Addy, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
It looks like someone shuffled everything around. Like,
okay.
And that just made me think, like, could someone sort of put something offensive in here and, you know, fill in someone else's information? Like, is there a risk with this sort of activity where it's hard to track who's writing what?
Yes, so there is a risk. Absolutely, there is the risk, but there will be the same risk they would have in a face-to-face class, a student getting up and saying a cuss word, right? So that's one of those things that you can set up norms for your class or communicate in the syllabus, that when we are in class and communicating, we need to be respectful and only talk about things that are class related. One benefit of using Google Docs is that you can see the page history. So if students are logged into the system, you'll be able to see who has contributed to what, right?
Okay.
I would not make this activity a very high stakes activity. So I wouldn't do this as, you know, a very high stakes evaluation like an exam, but this is a really quick, you know, tool that you can really gauge and get students to participate kind of like on the go. And that can be a helpful tool, but, you know, I wouldn't make this as a super long project. I wouldn't just set it up in this way. If you want to set up as like a major project or something, we can there's other ways that we can integrate these Google Docs with the Canvas system, and then the students will be fully logged in, and as they are kind of contributing to the document, you definitely can see who has contributed to what and when. So if there's a disruptor that goes in and kind of shuffles things or deletes something, you can see who has done that to the document, okay? But it's really easy to set it up. I mean, and once you have a little file, you know, with kind of like a summary what happened for that activity for your records. So any additional questions about this specific tool? If not, I clicked it. Apparently there's a little timer here. You can always ask through the chat section. So online engagement and new norms. So this goes back to your specific question, Saurabh, right? So when you are teaching in this online environment, whether it is, you know, fully online or SMUflex, it's really helpful for you to kind of set up new norms for your course. Norms that are going to be a little bit different than if you're doing this kind of face-to-face. And especially when you're thinking about online engagement, sorry, there's a little timer. You have to be intentional. You have to plan for an engagement, and you need to make sure to break up the, oh Lord, there's a timer there. So let me see if I can do this without a timer. So you need to break up the class into smaller sections. So I'm using a PowerPoint presentation for this session. What I've done is I've been really purposeful on adding specific slides when there is an activity or when I want my students to ask questions. I made a plan for more check-in so that people are following along the session and it can, like, I can ask, well, how are you guys doing? Is everything making sense? Also, you can provide many ways that students can engage and ask questions. So you can use the chat if you want to, but if you're a little more outspoken person, you could, raise the digital hand, then I can unmute you and you can go in and kind of talk to the group. But the main thing is, like, focus on your learning objectives, right? A lot of the times we try to introduce a bunch of different technology, and it's more difficult to manage all the technologies and just like to address the learning objectives. So don't feel like you have to use all of these tools that I'm showcasing today. I'm doing this on purpose because of the learning objectives for this specific session, but you can just pick one that you feel comfortable in and utilize that. The more you stick with one specific tool, the more your students kind of get used to using that tool. So whether it is like a quick check-in using Google Docs, or if it is using Zoom polling, or it is using Polleverywhere, the students will get used to that for your class so they know what to expect. So try to just, pick one and become fluent with it, and it's gonna be better and it's gonna be easier for your students. So now there's a poll here. So Laureen, if you could please launch the first poll, that would be awesome. Laureen, are you there? There it is. So this is the first poll. Have you thought about your fall 2020 classroom norms yet? So some folks see that the majority now has thought about some classroom norms, which is good. So there you go. Now, some people that now that I've mentioned, they might be thinking about the norms, which is good too. So this is an example of a Zoom poll, right? So the reason why Laureen is actually launching the poll for me is because for these IT workshops, she officially kind of created the link for the Zoom meeting. So I wasn't able to actually add the poll on my end. But as the host, you can enable these polls for your Zoom, and you can even pre-schedule the questions that you're going to be asking your students. So this is the first question. So Laureen, do you mind showing kind of like the next question, please, for the poll? So the majority here, has thought about the norms, which is good. Let me see here. And there you go. So when are you planning on communicating these norms? Okay. So that's a good place. So that as the first issue arises. So there's a couple, one person there. So as you are setting up the norms, you have these options of when to communicate them with your students. If you have not thought about these norms yet, maybe now is the time to consider thinking about what you want kind of your students to how you want your students to be participating in this new online environment. And this is something that you can do by yourself. There's, you can Google classroom norms for the online environment. There's going to be a bunch of different suggestions. But it's another thing that I'm going to talk about is that you can always kind of involve your students, right? And by the way, to set up a Zoom poll, there are some instructions. You can always go to smu.zoom.us and then /meeting. And then you add a poll and create questions and click on polling and launch poll to launch these questions to your students. The benefits of using these Zoom polls is that it's really easy to launch when you have them pre-scheduled in your system. The negative aspect is that there's no record of who has said what. So if you're using this for your participation, it will be really hard for you to know who has said what. So keep them really light and just to gauge if people gauge people's opinions about a specific topic, but this is not going to be something that you're going to be using as part of the assessment. Now, when you're thinking about the norms, right, You make sure to share these new classroom norms ahead of time. You might want to include the students in this norm setting process. So that's another thing that you might, if you have not thought about these norms yet, you can even provide the students with the draft of the norms and ask feedback on it and see what they think about it. Or use a brainstorm process like, how do you want our fall 2020 class to go? Like, what is the type of expectation for communications as we are connecting on Zoom, as we are doing these participation activities, and get the students engaged. You might want to request student acknowledgement for the updated norms. So this has happened for somebody that said that, I'm going to only create these norms as the first issue arises. So we've had situations like that before in the spring. As we moved online, some faculty did not have different norms, right, as we changed teaching modalities. But once there was an issue that happened, they decided to create a norm document, and then they created a quiz in the Canvas system where students would acknowledge that their new norms for participation in class, and if they didn't follow the norms, their participation grade would be affected. And the other thing that you should do as a best practice, always start the class kind of by reiterating the classroom norms, pretty similar to what I've done at the start of this session. I had that slide, kind of reiterating how the students can participate, for them to, utilize the chat, for them to have, a pen and a pencil and paper and their phones, because those are things that we're going to be using for participation in this specific session. So you can always kind of add that as the students are entering the class, they're reacquainted with the norms of the class every day. Do we have any questions about this? So we have a little comment, right? We have a comment from enabling the poll feature in Zoom. So here are the instructions. So you have to, for the polling feature button to appear at the bottom of your Zoom meeting, you actually have to go on the Zoom kind of website version, the dashboard, and then you just click there and enable polls for your meetings. So if these instructions are not as comprehensive as you need, I am happy to hop in a Zoom call later on this week and kind of walk through these steps with you to make sure you have it, and we can even test stuff out. But even if you go into the desktop dashboard of Zoom, you can pre-schedule your polls in advance. So you can have all your questions there. And when you go into the meeting, you just have to click on the poll button and then just launch it for your session. And then Susan said that polls and Zooms are great for remote classes, and she used quite a bit last semester. So for hybrid classes, she said that she has like 50 students on Zoom and 50 in the classroom at the same time. So she was like, would you recommend that I go back to Polleverywhere so that all students can participate? So Polleverywhere is another tool that we're going to get to in this presentation. I would say, Susan, that is all about preference. If you feel more comfortable with the Zoom polls, you can do it. The negative aspect, like I said, you're not going to have a record of those responses. If you do it on Polleverywhere, which is another polling tool that we have access to at SMU, then for those polls, you actually have a spreadsheet that you can download with the results. So if you want to keep track of people's responses, I would recommend using the Polleverywhere application software. But if it's just something that is like quick feedback, you just want to make sure that the students are alive and they're answering, then I would just do a Zoom poll. So it's just up to you. So duplicating a poll for 3 sections, that's an interesting one. So the only way to pre-schedule these poll questions are through the website, and you have to do it per session. So one thing that you could do is type up your questions in a Word document and just have copy and paste and copy and paste. That has been the best way to maximize that. Right now, there isn't a feature they can allow you to copy the polls from one meeting to the next, which also sucks. So if you want to use it for multiple classes, maybe the Polleverywhere tool is going to be a better option, because then you can create those questions there and then just change the audience or change the session there. And then said, did Zoom polls change? Last semester, I was able to download. I'm not sure, Susan, if that has changed. Do we have some ATSD here on the call that would like to chime in? How about Levi or Faye?
So there's two options with polls. You can get it to where you allow polls to be anonymous or not.
So you had to register. Students had to register in advance, right, for you to be able to have that. Okay, so that would be the trick too. So yes, you can have this downloadable sheet if your students register in advance, which if you're setting up your Zoom meetings through Canvas, there is a little check, right? Or like a little button that you check in Zoom that to require registration. But I'm not sure. There you go. But Faye said that you can get your poll reports from Zoom, but it is dependent on people registering for the session. Is that correct? Oh, there you go. Generating meeting reports for registration and polling. So through the chat, there is a link on how you do that, but the students will have to be registered. So there you go. So hopefully that answers your question. Any additional questions about that? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, go ahead.
Faye is saying they do not have to register when you run the report. I was mistaken. I thought they did.
Yeah, that was my understanding too. Okay, so just follow, I guess, the link and you will see the documentation. Susan, well, Susan has already done it, but there you go. So you don't have to register. I stand corrected. So the theory behind some of these engagement things, right? So, and I want to ask you first, how often do you lecture? So, Maureen, could you please relaunch the poll? Hold on, let me see if I can do it on my end. Do you have the next poll? Maureen? No? Okay.
Addy?
Yes.
Sorry, I launched both of them. Did you just want me to share the results?
No, there was the other question, how often do you lecture?
I don't think I have that one. I'm so sorry. I only had those two
poll questions. That's okay. I'll skip it then.
Okay.
Okay, so there's different ways that you can kind of do a lecture, right? You can do a traditional lecture, and this is an interesting quote from Mark Twain, right? College is a place where professors' lectures notes go straight to the students' lecture notes without passing through the brains of either, which I disagree, because there are some benefits of the traditional lecture, but active learning, you actually involve the students and get them doing the things and thinking about the things that they're doing. So there is some evidence that the lectures can achieve, right? Is as effective as other methods, but they're not as effective as discussions for promoting changes in attitudes, right? So that's one thing that you need to think. If you want change in attitude, maybe you're not just going to be lecturing the whole time. And they're ineffective for teaching values associated with subject matter, inspire interest in a subject, and personal social adjustment, and teaching behavioral skills. The main thing is, like, there's ways that you can kind of incorporate lecture, but if you add active learning with the lectures, then you're going to have better results. So what I want you guys to do now, on top of your Zoom window, there is an option to annotate, okay? So I want you to click on the More Tools and click on Annotate and grab a little pencil, and I want you to write down on the screen in this graph, how do you think that the heart rates go based on the times and minutes from the lectures? So you have here the beats per minute on the one of the axes, and you have time in minutes. So go ahead and grab a little pencil and draw on the screen and see where that goes with the heart rate between the times. There you go. There you go. Any more?
Addy, I can't find the pencil or the annotation note.
Are you on a computer or are you on a mobile device?
Computer.
Okay, so there should be some more options or more. And when you click on it, there's an option to annotate. Do you see more?
No. Are you talking about at my?
Or view options? View options? Do you
Oh.
see view options? I guess there's more on my end.
No, there are four little icons at the top left of my screen, and all they do, I think, is just show sharing view, and that's it.
Do you see on top of the screen next to the green bar? Do you see a green bar on top of your screen?
I see share. I guess I'm still looking at the Google thing. Don't wait on me. We've got. I'll figure this out, or call y'all later.
Yeah, you can call me, and then we can do a Zoom call, and we can play around with this tool. Okay.
Good. Thank you, Addy.
But this is kind of interesting. So a lot of folks, you know, the opinion is that starts up with the higher beats per minute, and then as the lecture progresses, you know, the heartbeats go down, and that is very true. So now you see that black line on the background. So this is a study that was published in 2000, Bly, but it's interesting that this is the trajectory of the heart rate. So if you follow my pink line, you see here, this is kind of the medium. But yes, the more you lecture, the more the less the heart beats. So the students go into rest mode. So the more we can incorporate these activities to get their heart rate kind of going a little bit and get them, you know, alert is helpful. So this is another strategy that you could do, that you can create these activities where you ask the students kind of to take notes on the screen. And with that, you'll be able to get them to participate. So if you have a graphic or something, you can ask them to identify something on the screen, which could be really helpful. So I'm going to go ahead and clear all drawings. So getting the students to annotate, you need to annotate have the annotations enabled in your Zoom settings. So that's one thing that under that security icon, you can make sure that you can enable that. This annotation feature only happens when somebody's sharing the screen in Zoom. And under view options, people see the annotate button. And the mobile app, if people are on the screen, there's going to be a little pencil icon that they can click on, and they should be able to annotate with that pencil icon as well. So now I'm going to have a quick question, and it's going to utilize Polleverywhere. So if you have your cell phones nearby, you can either go to pollev.com/CTESMU, or you can text CTESMU to the number 22333. So you would put on the phone number area 22333, and on the very text message that you sent out, you type in CTESMU. And then you'll be able to join, and you'll be able to kind of type up your answers. You guys able to see the code? Hold on, let me go here and I will switch screens. So there you go. Can you guys see the Polleverywhere screen? Anyone?
Yes, I can see it. What is active learning?
Yes. So you see like how you respond. You hit respond by going to pollev.com/CTESMU, and then there you go, texting. Now, Polleverywhere is a tool that you can use the students' laptops or their mobile devices, and the responses can appear in multiple ways. For this specific answer, it's a word cloud that you're going to see. So the more you guys respond, you're going to see a word cloud of the responses, which is taking a little minute. But one of the things that people say, it's a lot of learning. Let me see. I'm going to try to refresh the window because it looks like the other smaller ones are not showing up. Oh, there it is. There we go. So it took me refreshing the window here. So this is kind of the summary of y'all's responses, right? What is active learning? It's like learning, students, engagement, discussions. So this tool that we're using is Polleverywhere, and we have a few licenses of Polleveryware available to faculty. So some of the question types that you might have are going to give you responses like this, but you can just do multiple choice here. I can show you even on here. You can go into activities and you'll see the different types of questions that you can create. When I click on create button, it's going to load for a second. There you go. We have multiple choice. You have word cloud. You have clickable image, survey, open-ended. You can schedule a competition, and there's a lot more here. So we have brainstorm, ranking, emotion scale, presentation feedback. There's all kinds of different options. So even if you're teaching this in SMUflex format, you can send out to the students that are in class or the students that are online and have everybody kind of participate with that tool. So it's wonderful. And this one, for sure, you definitely also get a report. You get an Excel spreadsheet, and then you're able to kind of see and use that for participation. So the tool is called Polleverywhere. To set up a Polleverywhere account, really easy. Request account. Go to Polleverywhere and sign in with your single sign-on. Click to create a poll and configure and activate. Well, one of the things that is interesting that I've noticed in like just for troubleshooting, this Polleveryware is really good. There's an integration between your polls, and you can kind of put a slide directly into your PowerPoint slide with the built-in instructions for the poll and the live results. What I noticed that when you're doing this via Zoom, that integration doesn't work very well. So you just have to toggle between kind of sharing your screen on a PowerPoint like I did to go into the main kind of desktop version if you want your students to see the results as they're happening live, okay? And then to embed in a PowerPoint presentation, there's an application called Pollev Presenter, and then you can use that and then build it in. So there are some benefits of having active learning in your presentation. So there are a couple of studies, or there are several studies that suggest that active learning really helps the student performance. And this particular one, Freeman et al. 2014, the authors concluded that if the experiments analyzed here had been conducted as randomized controlled trials of medical interventions, they may have been stopped for benefit, meaning that enrollee patients in the control condition might be discontinued because the treatment being tested was clearly more beneficial. So it's pretty bold. So, but then there's other studies here, you know, that this particular one, that it was really helpful, and inclusion of active learning approaches improves student outcomes on Ruiz, Primo et al. So there's some evidence there that supports that. There's other studies that support that you should include some active learning in your class. Any questions so far about Polleverywhere? Let me check on the chat. Yeah, so Keiko mentioned that you have to share the entire desktop to be able to have the Polleverywhere show up. Is that right, Keiko? As part of the built-in? I think so. I think that's what she said. Okay, now I have some active learning approaches that you guys can use in your courses that are kind of really easy to do. The first one is the pause procedure. So this is really beneficial. And the main thing is is you plan your lectures, you plan your classes, that you're not going to be lecturing more than 10 to 15 minutes at a time. So you can just, every time that you do this 10 to 15 minute lecture, you insert an active learning strategy. So in my case of this presentation, I already kind of built in as part of the slides, every few sections, I can put in a slide with an activity, right? And encourages the students to consider their understanding of the lecture material. So every time that you explaining something new, you can use an activity that will allow them to apply that new thing that you just explained to them. And then hopefully that can, you know, help with long-term retention because they actually have thought about it and applied. The other one, this is a very, very common strategy called think, pair, share. This can be easily done in Zoom, and we usually do this in class. So for this activity, we're going to test it out, and we're going to be doing the breakout rooms in Zoom to kind of replicate what we do in class. So for about 2 minutes, I would like for you to think of these questions and kind of write it down on a piece of paper, right? Like, have you used these techniques before? And what are the benefits and pitfalls of the think, pair, share? So the think, pair, share is you allow the students about 2 minutes to think about something that you talked about. And then they think about it, they can write out on a piece of paper. Then the second step, we pair. So we can pair these students with a buddy, and that's what we're gonna do in the next session. After these 2 minutes, I'm gonna break you out in breakout rooms, and you're gonna be talking about your answers to a buddy. And then after those 2 minutes with a buddy, you go back into the big class, and we'll share some examples with the bigger class. So for now, think about this technique and write down on a piece of paper, how have you used this technique before? If you haven't, say, I haven't used it before. What are potential benefits or pitfalls of this technique? Think about it, especially now teaching online. And then write down a specific example of how this technique can be used in your specific class. So I'll give you 2 minutes. Welcome back to the ones that are coming back. The other ones should be joining us in about 30 seconds if they don't come in.
It's a little awkward when someone's mid-sentence and then you just like plucked out of the room.
Yeah, well, it's kind of hard to model this now because we don't have a lot of time, right? We're going to, like, we have 2 minutes left, so we can kind of have to go really quickly. In class, you would have a little bit of more time. And there are ways that you can actually set up the different settings for the breakout rooms. For this one, it's 60 seconds until I say that the room is going to end, until it closes. But you can actually change the options for the breakout room to give them 120 seconds. Okay. So you can broadcast a message to all saying, hey, you know, we're going to be closing things up, and set it up in Zoom that each breakout session will wrap up within 120 seconds. So then people will know after a while doing this in the class, if the norm is that you're going to be wrapping up with 120 seconds, people will get used to it. But it's really easy to create a breakout room. You can create the breakout rooms icon, select the number of rooms and how to divide students, and then you assign the students to the rooms. As you can see, for some of the students, I moved you from one room to the next because there was nobody in that particular room with you. So I moved you to a room that there was people in. So for the think, pair, share, we're running out of time. So you would go in and I could go, hey, you know, Keiko, what did your group say? Or Peter, what did your group say? And you can kind of share, and we can share with the whole group. So in the interest of time, I'm going to go skip to the I guess, resources, and kind of this is like the review of our learning objectives. So hopefully this is going to get you thinking about it. We only have 45 minutes for the session, so it was like drinking out of a fire hose. So if you want one-on-one sessions and figure out how to apply these strategies in your own classroom, please do not hesitate to contact me. So most of you guys already worked with me or know how to reach me. So this is my contact information. So just reach out and we'll set up a time and we'll make sure that you have these strategies in your course.